have a dramatic group based in Cincinnati called the Fountain Square Fools, and they have a special presentation for you on fear.
Fear is father to our sin. Fear is mother to our shame. Fear in the itching palm of the despairing poor is the same fear in the clenched fist of the dying rich. This Judas kiss kindles a twisted kindness. It perverts our handshakes, our hugs, our embrace. We have no choice but to pray for a peace not born of fear, a peace that the world can never give, peace born of forgiveness and the courage to live.
Comic book heroes. Seems like they've been around forever. But this year they've been joined by another superhero. Francis, brother of the universe, better known as Saint Francis of Assisi, whose real-life adventures could rival Superman's. The idea for this unusual comic book came about when the Japanese representative for Marvel Comics happened to be visiting the Franciscan Chapel Center office in Tokyo. Father Roy Gasnick, director of Franciscan Communications in New York, talks about that memorable day.
Over coffee, one of the friars said to Gene Pelk, who was the representative, why don't you do a comic book on St. Francis? And Gene sat back and thought for a while, and he said, well, why not?
Father Roy was ultimately responsible for writing the original storyline.
In the storyline itself, what I think is most important are certain values that Francis had, values that are so needed today. The whole questions of relationships of children with their parents and vice versa.
But high atop the towers of Manhattan during early discussions at the executive offices of Marvel Enterprises, President Jim Galton wasn't so sure that a comic book about St. Francis was such a good idea, but he changed his mind.
Today I'm a believer. I think my circulation director just came in a little while ago, as you know, and told us we're into our third reprint on the book.
With 350,000 copies already in print, the next step for the production department is to prepare foreign issues for international distribution in countries such as Spain, France, and Japan.
Hi, Mary Jo.
Hi, Father.
Mary.
Father, how you doing?
Very
We're just
good.
talking about the foreign versions of St. Francis.
We're going to be making this available to foreign publishers in two different formats. One is the American version, where they can just route out the English copy and put it in their own languages, as the Japanese did.
So, the dream has become a reality, and today, Francis, Brother of the Universe, can be found on comic book racks all over the country.
It's a very good feeling when you look at a stand and you do see Spider-Man and the Incredible Hulk and Superman, Batman, and right there in the middle of it, Francis, Brother of the Universe. What that comic book rack is saying is that Francis is a superhero like these other comic book characters are, but he's real, and they're not. I think Francis would be perfectly delighted to see a comic book about himself there, and I think Francis, who always thought of himself as a fool for God.
This is the story of a simple man, a humble and devout man, a man who sought no position of power, desired no special privileges, and expected no particular attention. This was a man whose only wish in life was to serve the God he loved so deeply. This was a man whose name was John Newman. John Nepomucene Newman's greatest desire in life was to be a simple priest, but instead he was selected to be the 4th Bishop of Philadelphia, a position which he never would have chosen for himself. Although bishop of the largest diocese in the country, John Newman continued to live the life of an ordinary priest, avoiding all displays of his rank whenever possible. Ever mindful of his vow never to waste a minute, Bishop Newman often neglected his own needs in the service of God, and it was in doing his master's will that Bishop Newman collapsed on the street, dying in the home of a stranger, alone. The Church of St. Peter the Apostle in Philadelphia, PA, is the final resting place of Bishop Newman. Once entombed in the burial crypt below the church, St. John Newman now rests in a glass sarcophagus beneath the marble altar of the newly restored Newman Shrine. The National Shrine of America's first male saint was renovated recently in order to bring it up to date, both physically and liturgically. In addition to the other renovations accomplished at the shrine, the mortal remains of the saint were also refurbished. Originally entombed in the floor of the church, the body was exhumed and placed within the back altar just prior to the ceremonies declaring John Newman blessed in 1963. In the 27 years since the beatification, many changes have taken place, the most important being the inclusion of John Newman's name among the Legion of Saints. Last year, as a part of the restoration, the remains of St. John Newman were removed from the altar and reconstructed. This process, which took 3 days to complete, involved two separate aspects: the refurbishing of the effigy mask and the revesting of the mortal remains. Ronald Pacelli, a funeral director from the Philadelphia area, was commissioned by the Archdiocese to undertake this enormous project. Once removed from the glass altar, the remains of Bishop Newman were taken and placed on a portable dressing table. Under the careful direction of 4 experts from the Dodge Chemical Company of Massachusetts, the effigy mask was removed from over the skull. This mask, constructed from 1/4-inch plaster cast some 27 years prior, was found to be in excellent condition, although slightly faded from age. Pictures and sketches of Bishop Newman were then examined to help determine his correct likeness and skin tones. After carefully testing the surface of the mask with various cosmetic mediums, restorative artists Dick Sanders and his son Charles agreed that the Dodge Perma-Cosmetics were best suited for this purpose. These cosmetics were chosen because of their ability to conceal the slight flaws in the surface and maintain a permanent smudge-free finish. When the application of the opaque finish was completed, the hair restorations were applied. This process is done by spreading a thin layer of special wax over the penciled pattern in the area to which the hair is to be attached. 1-inch sections of human hair are then cut and embedded in the wax base to restore the sideburns. When the predetermined area is covered, the hair is then trimmed, thinned, and combed until it gives a natural appearance. The eyebrows are restored in a similar fashion with the substitution of individual strands of hair for the 1-inch sections. The construction of the eyelashes was accomplished by attaching 1-inch strands of hair in double thickness to a foundation of adhesive tape, simulating the natural growth pattern. The hair was thinned to the correct length and inserted into the line of closure in the wax. Natural eyelid wrinkles and lines were duplicated on the surface and smoothed into their natural shape. Utilizing the only photo ever taken of Bishop Newman, the artist determined that the mask lacked the natural facial expression and contour of the mouth present in Newman's face. The fullness of the lips was duplicated by using modeling wax, which was selected because of its stability and firmness. Characteristic lines were eventually added in the wax to simulate the lip lines and establish a more natural appearance. As the work on the mask progressed, the examination and revesting of the body began. The old faded bishop's robes were carefully removed and the mortal remains of John Newman exposed. After careful inspection, it was found that the remains contained in a transparent burial pouch were in excellent condition despite the fact that they were never subjected to any embalming process. The skeleton, not in need of any additional preservation, was then redressed in the purple bishop's cassock, white alb, red cincture, and white chasuble. These vestments, custom made by the C.M. Almy Company of Connecticut, were fashioned from fine linen, which was lined in gold satin and edged with a religious pictorial pattern. A new pectoral cross and episcopal ring were also added before St. John Newman was laid to rest on a green velvet mattress in a newly renovated glass casket. The bishop's mitre, which was composed of the same material as the vestments, was applied after the refurbished effigy mask was in place. Once this was completed, the casket was officially sealed by the vicar and placed within the marble and glass altar in the center of the sanctuary, easily accessible to the 30,000 pilgrims who visit the shrine each year. With the renovations at the shrine now complete, it is certain that the number of visits to this holy place will undoubtedly increase, along with the amount of devotion to St. John Newman, an idea to which John Newman would probably object, simply because he was such a humble man.
Well, there are people never receiving anything from God at all. Oh, they are shaken from their believing. When they don't see results, they quickly fall. But don't you waver, keep on a-living, in the way God wants you to. Don't get discouraged, keep on a-giving, soon it will come back to you. Keep on casting your bread upon the water, soon it's gonna come back home on every way. Keep on casting your bread upon the water, soon it's gonna come back home on every way. The measure pressed down, shaken together, running over, soon it's gonna come back home on every way.
Keep on working, seeking the kingdom, instead of working for your needs. Keep on sharing the love of Jesus. You know growing comes from planting seeds.
Keep on casting your bread upon the water, soon it's gonna come back home on every way. Keep on casting your bread upon the water, soon it's gonna come back home on every way.
Good measure pressed down, shaken together, running over.
Soon it's gonna come back home on every way.